「 as I said, there is a international family of these kind of instruments, and how it became Hungarian. Actually, it's not that long story. We used an old version of this instrument, but in the 19th century, actually exactly in 1873, there was a Hungarian inventor, a very modern guy, who decided he was a visionary and he saw fantasy in this instrument. He saw possibilities in this instrument, so he decided to make it more sophisticated. So what he did, he gave sustain pedal to it. Okay, the sustain pedal is I show you how it works. Okay, without pedal, with the pedal. So I can decide when to stop the sound. So this is one of his inventions using on this instrument. The other one is the bass strings. If you look at the instrument, you see here is like silver and here is like copper strings. And the copper strings were added by him. So he made much bigger the instrument. And so he gave strength to the instrument. Okay. And the other thing what he did is, I have to use musical phrases, sorry for that, but the cymbalum before it was a dialectical instrument and he made it chromatical. That means if you have a piano and you have just the white keys, okay, and he added the black keys to the cymbalum, if you understand like this. Okay, so he changed the tuning of the cymbalum also. And the cymbalum became very big, very large. It has 133 steel strings, very strong, and so it needs a structure to hold back the strings. So that's why it's very heavy. It's like 90 kilograms, one cymbalum. So also he had to use legs for the cymbalum and pedal for the sustain, as I said. So basically that was his invention. His name was Sunda Vencel József, and he invented the modern cymbalum, what we call the Hungarian great concert cymbalum. And that's what I play now for you. also may be interested how old is this music that we play. And the answer is not very simple, because the tradition is not like something happened 1,000 years ago and then we do the same. No, the tradition is it's passed by from generation to the next generation, and that's why it's a living thing, and it's also, as it lives, as it changes. It changes by centuries, by the different eras and the different cultural environments. Okay, so the Hungarian music is the oldest parts of the music is more than 1,000 years old. We don't really know how old it is, but we know that it has Asian background, because Hungarians came to Europe from Western Asia. Okay, and I give you an example, and maybe that will make you clear how it works. So if I play one piece, just one piece for you, and then I can tell you, if I analyze it, like scientifically you need to analyze it, the music, then you can realize that the melody perhaps is more than 1,000 years old. But if you look at the rhythm is it was a popular dance rhythm in the late Middle Ages, so like it's like 900 years old. Okay, and then you look at the lyrics. Now I don't sing, but I just play the instrument, but most of these songs have lyrics. And if you look at the lyrics, you will realize that it's like 700 years old, from the Renaissance era. And okay, but this was just the melody, but there is accompaniment. So how long is the accompaniment? The accompaniment is coming from the Baroque era, which is like 300 years old. And then we arrive to the present. And as I play you this one piece, you can hear the different musical layers, the historical layers, within only one piece. So this is how the tradition, very old and very new. Okay, and so what we play is traditional Hungarian cymbal music. And what does it mean? What does it mean, traditional music? Maybe it's good to define if I say what it is not. So it's not urban music. It's played in the villages. So it's the music of the villagers and the peasants and those people who work in the agriculture in the rural areas. Okay, and what else it is not? It is not the classical tradition, because also we have classical tradition, but that was played by the aristocrats, for the aristocrats in the aristocratic courts, the nobles. So that's another tradition. So this tradition is the poor people, the village people, the average people, and we learned from them. In Hungary, this tradition is dying out like everywhere in the world, because we are entering into a modern era and the lifestyle changed, everything changed. But old people still know the tradition, and if you visit them or you visited them in the past, because we haven't started this yesterday, we started a long time ago. So if you visited them, you could learn from them, and this is the music what we learned from them in the villages, from the old people, and that's what we show you now. And also the traditional music is local always, everywhere. Yes, and we play music from different regions of Hungary. I'm not really telling you the details about these regions, because probably you won't really understand what I'm saying, and it doesn't really matter for you, but just let you know that so we play different music from different regions of Hungary. Okay, and the next one I'm telling you a little bit about. It's a nice combination of the measures. The beat measures is 3 and 2 measures changing in the music. If you listen, you will hear. Now I will play from a different region, because this was northern part of Hungary, which just I played now. Now we will play from music from Transylvania, and in this region they use a different kind of stick. Actually, it's the same, just the head of it is different. So it's made of wood, obviously, and on this there is some cotton patch to the end of the stick, and this one is without the cotton, so it has much harder sound. You will hear it, and I hope you will enjoy it. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to talk about is how we know this music and why we play this music. And maybe you heard about the names of Zoltán, Kodály, and we have to move a little bit forward. They want us to stop, but we don't want to stop. They want to evacuate us. We came a long way to have this concert. Thank you for your support. Thank you very much. This was Tárkány Trió. Kovács Bálint.